You had heard tales about hikers going missing, suddenly vanishing without a trace, but you always chalked it up as either stories to scare the public or people who were not prepared. You would never be one of those people. That's what you always told yourself. You were prepared. You had a map of the area and a compass. And yet, the area around you does not look like the way you came into the forest. You hadn't even stepped off the path, but as you turn to look back at the way you came, nothing looks the same. You can't even see the trail you had sworn you had just been on minutes before. You try not to panic, but your mind begins racing to understand how this could even be possible. In an attempt to get back on track, you pull out your compass and stare blankly at it. The needle is spinning around frantically, never stopping and not slowing down. Pit forming in your stomach, you take a step back, or rather, you would if you could. Something is wrapped around your foot. A dirty, thick root snakes upwards and entangles your ankles. You can see more of them rising up through the dirt, reaching out to grab you. Frantically, you try to pull again, but this seems to only cause the roots to tighten their grip, pressing against your skin. Any tighter and it would break the bone. The tree closest to you begins to shift. The bark creaks and twists and branches drop. What used to be a hole for an animal lengthens to form a wide, gaping mouth and two hollow eyes. Now that this entity has revealed itself, you wonder how you hadn't noticed it before. It had been that close to you the entire time, hidden in plain sight. Fight or flight mode kicks in. You have to get out of here. Once again you pull, but the vines aren't just around your knees now. You're also being pulled down. The cold mud and dirt drinks you in as more roots begin to crawl around you, yanking at each of your limbs and forcing you to embrace the soil. There's more movement in the area now, as you see more of these creatures coming to life. There's at least 5 or 6 of them, repositioning themselves, changing the layout of the forest. Now you begin to understand. You had never left the path. In the distance, you can hear the voice of someone coming from where the trail should be, the same direction the other trees are moving towards. You want to yell and warn them, but your mouth is greeted with dirt as you're pulled under. The last speck of sunlight above turns to a pinpoint hole as the dirt swallows you. Darkness embraces you, and you take your last ragged breath, as you can feel the roots beginning to burrow into your skin. Soon, your body will be reduced to mulch. Hi, I'm Ryan, lead designer of Ethereal here at Fineground Cryptids, and today we're going to talk about the loose root, a creature of our own design, and we're going to talk about how it fits into the world, the inspiration for it, and what does it mean for the game itself. Let's dive in. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe and check out the description below for the link to our Twitch channel where we do the occasional development stream. And of course, everything you see in this video is, of course, work in progress, meaning that though the core concept of the loose root will stay the same, we are still a testing product and there might be final changes, making things look a little bit different than what you see here in the video. The loose root is a plant-like creature that likes to blend in with the vegetation of the area. It usually likes to take on the form of a tree, and when unmoving, it looks like everything else around it in the surrounding space. Like all art that's currently in Ethereal, it's designed by my talented wife, who did a fantastic job showing this entity that it's a collection of roots and plant growths. Its body looks loose, allowing it to easily take the form and shape of whatever plant it wants to be. These Ethereals are devious and conniving. They reposition themselves when not being watched to make hikers and explorers think that they're walking in circles, or that they are lost. Once they finally get bored of their prey, they use their appendages, often roots and branches, to drag their prey into the ground, turning them into a fertilizer that they feed on for weeks on end. The loose root came in design because we needed a certain entity to fill a certain gameplay desire. Normally, players are hunting down one threat for a mystery, but we wanted it so that the GMs could also have other creatures that they could distribute and challenge the players throughout before hitting that main threat. It wouldn't make sense for the players to be constantly bumping into different Bigfoots, aliens, Sasquatch, etc. So what we did was we created something that would be specifically allowing the GM to easily fit into most worlds. How we did that was we looked at it and saw, well, generally players are going to probably be in areas with some sort of vegetation. So that kind of led into the creation of this entity that can fit into most vegetated areas, such as trees or other types of plant. From there, the lore wrote itself. It's very well known that hikers go missing on a very frequent basis in real life. So we kind of wrote the mythos around that. It turns out that these loose roots are creatures that are spread across the world and are actually the cause for many hikers going missing. And the reason that they vanish out of plain sight is because their vines literally are coming up from the ground and grabbing you and dragging you under, making it impossible to ever find you if you so happen to unfortunately stumble across a few of them. To ensure this flavor of getting lost is like baked right into the stat block of the loose root, we made sure that it also has this ability that literally if there's a compass within 1,000 feet of it, the compass just goes haywire and doesn't work at all. This allows the GMs to like very easily look at the stat block and understand how the creature works and what part of it makes people get lost so easily, aside from it literally uplifting itself, moving to another part of the forest, and putting itself back down to get people disoriented. Another interesting thing about the loose root is how the beacon views them. You see, the beacon has a different ranking system that determines how much of a threat a certain entity is, and loose roots are marked as I, which stands for ingrained, which means that they are seen as being so part of the world and so baked into the world that it would be impossible without a large amount of resources and energy to fully extinguish them. You see, loose roots are seen as almost like an infection and a parasite that's been spread out throughout many forests of the world, and there's so many of them that at this point the beacon only really seeks to stop them if there's a very active threat. Like if they know that people are going missing because of a few in a forest, then they might intervene. But outside of that, they can't really interfere with it because there's so many of them, and it's impossible to really know where they are because how they blend right into plain sight, and you can't really determine where they are. It makes it very difficult to hunt them down when you have a creature that can literally just blend into its surroundings and only really reveal itself if it wishes to. This is a creature that really creates suspense within a group. Once you encounter the creature once or you hear about it once, it's sort of like a mimic, but instead every single tree could possibly be one. So what does combat with a loose root look like? Well, first of all, there's usually a few of them traveling in packs. That allows them to change the forest a lot easier. That means that players were going to have to be very mindful of how many they're taking on at once and kind of where they're positioned. Their kits are a little bit more on the simpler side, having a ranged poison dart attack and a branch slam attack. Where they do get dangerous, however, is their ability to mulch. This ability starts by doing a large AoE grapple attempt around them. Anyone that fails on the following turn will need to do another saving throw, and on failure, get pulled into the ground. For every turn that they stay like this, they take a bit of damage, and the loose root even heals itself as it feeds off of them. Now, the loose root doesn't have a telegraphed attack. However, it does have something else that's pretty cool. Normally in Ethereal, when an entity doesn't have a telegraphed attack, we do put an alternate stat block for the GM to consider using instead of the main stat block. Not for the loose root. Instead, we've created a suggestion of ways that their stat block can get adjusted based on the area you find it in. So, for example, basic forests make them more dexterous. Swamps and marshes make them more poisonous. Jungles extend the reach of their vines for their to mulch ability. Deserts make them more like a cactus and damage entities that get too close. Grasslands make their bodies sturdy due to strong winds, making them tankier and harder to take down. Meanwhile, being near or in water causes them to take on this form of seaweed or algae, causing them to be sticky and hard to get away from. Finally, for the few times that GMs might want to place them in the cave, we've also given them an opportunity to do so, where the loose root takes on the form of a cave moss, which means them being much easier to kill, but they also deal more damage with their attacks. What we love about the loose root is it's not a blank slate entity, but it's one that you can still fit into many of the parts of the world with ease. You don't really need to think really hard about like, oh, why would there be a tree here, or why would there be a plant here that could possibly be a loose root. Mind you, this isn't the only entity that's sort of like a filler type creature, but this is one that we've created that allows you to fit into many parts of the world with ease. And you can also create a lot of interesting stories around it. You can play stories around the forest seeming to be moving at night, where people think that the tree line keeps moving. You can play stories about like hearing like voices of whispers of creaking wood at night. And then of course you can just use these entities as either a single threat that's causing maybe one large loose root that's been sort of grabbing villagers, or you can maybe have a swarm of them that constantly are rearranging how things work in the area. Possibly you could even take one that has a single tree that's been in the middle of the town for ages now. Nobody suspected that was a loose root the entire time that's been feeding on the populace. They aren't super complex, but they do have a few nuances to them in flavor, and they kind of really allow you to drive that inspiration and take the creature how you wish to drive it. Let us know what you think about the loose root. Are there any unique forms of vegetation you could see it taking on, and how would that affect its stat block? Once again, I'm Ryan, and thanks for checking out this video, and we'll see you next time.